What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are having a great day out there. Time to talk about Nvidia Corporation. Ticker symbol NVDA. The company just reported their Q2 earnings after the bell. We'll talk about them. They also gave Q3 guidance from a revenue perspective as well. We'll talk about that. We are going to get into the numbers. We'll take a look at the gaming, the data center, all the different business models that Nvidia has, and we'll talk about the revenue trends that we're seeing over at Nvidia. Now, I think probably one of the most impressive things I have seen during this earnings season is the way Nvidia is controlling operating expenses. Okay, you can turn on CNBC, you can read different analysts. Not a lot of them are going to talk about this stuff, but it is absolutely critical, and it is extraordinarily impressive over at Nvidia, and I'm not shocked at all. This stock is heading higher as we move into the after hours trade. We'll talk about the revenue. We'll talk a little bit about the profits as well when we look at those numbers. Now, I talked about how this stock is moving higher. Now, on today's trade, it was down by 2.25%, but it was trading lower in the after hours, down to about $186 per share. We've bounced up a little bit. We'll talk about what this means from a technical perspective for Nvidia as well. Now, this Q2 came in. The top line press release is always going to say they beat by EPS, they beat on revenue, those types of things. As you know, this is the investor channel, not read the top line of a press release channel. So those things don't typically matter. Now, we did have solid, just absolutely solid revenue growth year over year, 68.2% revenue growth, coming in at $6.51 billion. Now, the upcoming quarter, so we just had Q2, the upcoming quarter is Q3, and we're projecting $6.8 billion. Consensus was for $6.53 billion. They just put up a quarter with 6.51. So I would expect Nvidia to be in that 6.9 to probably $7 billion range in terms of revenue next quarter, because like I said, these management always underestimate things, so the tops of the press release always look pretty good. Now, Nvidia is in the midst of trying to complete the ARM acquisition. So this company called ARM, which Nvidia partners with to make some of their chips. ARM also partners with companies like Apple and Amazon and other cell phone makers out there. Currently, that company is owned by SoftBank. This is a massive, just an absolutely massive $40 billion transaction. And Nvidia has a $484 billion market cap. So this is nearly 10% of the market cap. Now, whenever you try to create that type of acquisition, you are going to have governments and regulators all over the world trying to put their hands in that cookie jar, wanting Nvidia to grease their palms so they will approve this deal. And that is what's going on in the United Kingdom, also here in the United States and around the world. Now, I cannot predict what governments are going to do, okay? But what I will tell you is if Nvidia can complete and get this ARM acquisition completed, it will give them a massive, massive competitive advantage in the marketplace and just solidify them, in my opinion, as likely the next chip designer, chip maker for the next 25 years. So this would be an absolute home run, security fence around the business, moat, whatever you want to call it. This would be massive. And if this deal doesn't fall through, wouldn't necessarily be too concerned. It could create some downward pressure on the shares and create a buying opportunity, but it wouldn't solidify Nvidia's business as much as they possibly could. These acquisitions are very, very, very tough to get approved. And if Nvidia is able to pull that off, be an extraordinary feat and give them a huge leg up on any competition that emerges over the next decade or two. Now, in terms of their business, absolutely phenomenal. Their two main business segments are these gaming PCs or these gaming chips and gaming supplies inside gaming computers. It does say gaming here, but just from my knowledge, a lot of this stuff also gets used in crypto mining as well. So people are using components that are used in gaming PCs to mine crypto as well. And so you've got a little bit of crypto demand in here mixed with gaming. You also have data center, where you have Intel primarily has fallen off over the last few years in this business segment, and Nvidia has come in there and scooped up a lot of that business along with AMD as well. Now, take a look. Gaming revenue, still the predominant and the leading revenue maker over at Nvidia, coming in at $3 billion. The data center coming in at $3.366 billion. Total revenues, like I said, came in at $6.5 billion year over year. We're sitting at $3.86 billion this time last year. One thing that I do want to point out to you on this segment is Gaming Center, we're just seeing just steady increases here, but I wanted to show you data center. So going back to last year, we were at $1.752 billion worth of revenue, ticked up about 150 million to 1.9, but then we stayed flat from Q3 to Q4, basically flat, maybe just not any enterprise spend during that time. Data center orders can kind of maybe be a little bit lumpy. They can come in once a year, twice a year, those types of things. That's possible with the data center, because I also noticed in Q1, basically flat as well, okay? Up a little bit, maybe $40-50 million. But then we saw a big acceleration in Q2, all the way back up to $2.3 billion. That's absolutely fantastic, and that's got to get you excited as an Nvidia investor. Now, what's getting me excited is, look, there's all these top line numbers. There's the acquisition. There's all this stuff. Even the products, if you want to geek out on Nvidia products, they're absolutely fantastic. I'm not an expert in those things, so we won't discuss the products themselves, but they're absolutely phenomenal in my opinion. Now, we've got a revenue here. We talked about that growth, up 68% from 3.9 billion up to 6.5 billion. Here's what I want to show you. That's probably the most impressive thing, and you're probably not going to see this on a CNBC. You're not going to see this in any analyst takes, but this is probably the most impressive thing about Nvidia. I want to show you operating expenses up 9%, okay? That is comboed with 68% revenue growth. So on the operating side, we went from $1.6 billion worth of expenses up to barely, just fractionally higher, precisely 9% higher, to $1.77 billion in operating expenses. So you guessed it. When you grow your revenue 68% and you barely increase your operating expenses year over year, and not only that, we expanded margins. Take a look at this. We went from 58.8% up to 64.8% margins. That is just showing you they have pricing power, and on top of that, the customers are demanding their products. They're demanding the products, and they can charge more. That is a winning combination. That is a combination you see at Apple. That is a combination you see at Microsoft, and maybe even like a Tesla as well. They are able to drive these revenues and drive up margins, but all of that is comboed and just absolutely beautifully complemented by the fact we only grew our operating expenses by 9%. So you guessed it, our operating income up 275%. Take a look at this, boys and girls. We went from $651 million worth of profit on a $480 billion company. Quite frankly, it's not that impressive. But take a look at this operating income at $2.44 billion. $2.44 billion. Last quarter, we were sitting at under $2 billion at $1.956 billion. So we bolted on nearly $500 million worth of operating income quarter over quarter, and we only bolted on about $600 million worth of revenue. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't think you should be tuning into the show anymore, because this is something that investors just absolutely salivate over. Let me show it to you from a different perspective as well. So our left-hand column, I'm sorry this is formatted not the best, but we've got our left-hand column here. Here's that $6.5 billion worth of revenue that we talked about. Here it is right here. And we pull down that $6.5 billion here. Here's our cost of revenue, high margin business. Take a look at this gross profit coming in at $4.2 billion. Here's what I want to show you. Here's our operating expenses. Our research and development went from, we'll call that $1 billion up to 1.2. Take a look at selling, general and administrative. Oh my, give the CEO a bonus at Nvidia. It went from 627 down. You grew your revenues by 68%. You expanded your margins by 600 basis points. And you drove down cost on the SG&A side from 627 to 526. I'm in love. If the Nvidia CEO asked me to marry him, I would marry him right here on the spot. So our total operating expenses, again, just up fractionally. This is almost a rounding error from 1.6 billion up to 1.77 billion. Not quite a rounding error, but very, very close. That gave us that income from operations at $2.44 billion. This is absolutely fantastic. Take a look at here. Net income, most of it's flowing down to that net income side. Oh my gosh, I love what I'm seeing here. And I think investors are kind of digesting the exact same thing, because when these numbers hit, this thing was down like $186, $170 per, $187 per share. And I was thinking to myself, I might have to go out and buy some of these shares. I already have plenty of Nvidia shares, but I might have to buy more. So this is where the stock is right now. It actually was right here at about 190. We're up here to 193. Investors are digesting the exact same numbers I am, and sophisticated investors don't just read the tops of press releases. Don't look at EPS and these types of things. They even glance over this year-over-year revenue growth. What they're looking at is exactly what I showed you, that they were able to expand margins by 600 basis points, grow revenues by 68%, but keep cost basically flat. And a ton of money just flowed down to this net income and operating side. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best financial quarters I have seen on a year-over-year basis, but even quarter-over-quarter. Because I want you guys to digest this. So if I don't do a video on a company and you're looking into it and you see a similar pattern, that you know this is just absolutely great. Take a look at this Q1. This was last quarter. Okay, we went from 5.6 billion up to 6.5 billion. So what's that? About 900 million or about $850 million worth of revenue growth. $850 million worth of revenue growth. But take a look at net income. It went up by like 400 million and some change. Our operating income went up by like 500 million. So almost all of our revenue growth flowed down to the net income and the operating income. I'm in love. This is fantastic. Now, from a trend perspective, this one is like a lot of the stocks that I'm seeing right now. This week has been, I think we had like the first 2-day down week or down day in the Dow Jones and S&P 500 in a long time. And so stocks have just been absolutely on fire. And so it's natural for them to want to take a little bit of a breath. And we're maybe seeing that with Apple and some of these other stocks, certainly Amazon and something like that is taking a breath right now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, what I'm seeing with Nvidia is we could start a new channel up here. Okay, I'll take this line out here. This is where the stock is trading right now. We could have found support here at 190. And we're going to bounce here at 193, and we're going to retest these highs at some point. This, again, is not factoring in any kind of broader market correction or any type of that type of thing, a resurgence of the medical condition that's going around. All these types of things can push stocks down and with good reason, right? Okay, but the upside on this one is back up to 210. We've got some temporary support here at 193. I wouldn't absolutely love going in at these levels, but let's just assume things get bad. In fact, that's kind of what you hope for with really good stocks like this, with absolutely fantastic financials and fundamentals. You actually kind of hope we get a broad market sell-off. And really what you're looking for is a break below 180 on this one. That would take out these lows. This formation of candles would just get wiped out, I think, pretty quickly. And you've got some levels of support down here for the stock, down about 150 to 130, 130 to 150. Now, am I dreaming? Probably a little bit, okay? Am I rolling something up over here and you might want to take a toke of it? Maybe, okay? But 130 to 150 would be an absolutely phenomenal. This is where you sell your used car, you sell things, and you load up. I'm kind of kidding there to a certain degree, but this is where you load up on Nvidia down here. Now, if this level holds, this 190 level holds, I actually like it. I don't mind this 190 level. Your downside's probably back down here to 180. Retest these lows as well. And maybe we channel out here over at Nvidia and we wait for this ARM deal to be closed. So I wouldn't necessarily want, unless technically Nvidia's stock chart just set up perfectly and it just read perfectly, which it doesn't at the current time. This ARM acquisition probably not necessarily priced into the stock as well. I think you get some positive news here and Nvidia is able to complete this deal. I think this stock could run. Now, if this deal falls apart, I don't necessarily think it's going to ruin Nvidia stock, but I think you could see some downward pressure as well because it's probably priced in a little bit. Okay, I don't think it's fully priced in, but I think it's priced in a little bit. But this was an amazing quarter from an operating income, net income perspective. And if Nvidia is able to keep that up, this valuation looks a little stretched right now. Okay, $480 billion, 49.50 PE on this one. But it just looks like it's setting up for a company a year, 2, 3 years later is just going to absolutely grow into this valuation and could easily grow into a much, much higher valuation as we move forward. In my opinion, Nvidia is an excellent, fantastic buy and hold stock. You buy it, you hold it, and you move on. You try to find your next one, and you add to Nvidia on any type of broad market weakness. In fact, it'd be in the top 4 or 5 stocks that I would add to, and you can probably guess the other 4 or 5 stocks that I would add to, since we do a Friday show that covers most of them every Friday here on the channel. Nvidia is right up there, believe it or not, with Facebook, Alphabet, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, in my opinion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We'll be back again soon with more. Good luck with your investments.